Hey there, welcome to Scandal Steep. She was the embodiment of elegance and enigma, a woman whose voice floated between cool, soulful depths and effortless sensuality. While most remember her through the silky notes of Smooth Operator, that glossy veneer masks a more complex reality. Behind the glamour, Sade Adu was never quite the archetype people assumed. "I guess I've always been a bit of an outsider," she once mused. Not fitting into any mold, especially not one covered in sequins. To understand her story is to uncover a woman who wasn't afraid to fade into the background, quietly reclaiming her power by doing so. Where most artists feared invisibility, she embraced it, disappearing not out of fear, but out of intent. What really happened to the woman who brought an entire era of class, soul, and emotional honesty into music? Brace yourself, her story is richer, deeper, and far more complicated than it first appears. When most people think of soul music, the UK isn't the first place that comes to mind. But in the 1980s, the landscape shifted. British acts were diving headfirst into the soulful grooves of the past, rediscovering rhythm and blues through a kaleidoscope of reinvention. You had Phil Collins dabbling in Motown territory, Soft Cell experimenting with Supreme's covers, and Dexy's Midnight Runners obsessing over rare groove vinyl. Spandau Ballet and ABC turned their synth-pop toward romantic balladry, all built upon a foundation of soul. Yet, it wasn't until Sade arrived that things got real. Her debut album, Diamond Life, didn't just nod to soul, it embodied it, bringing genuine emotional gravity to a scene often caught up in style over substance. Released in 1984, Diamond Life became more than an album, it became a mood. For many, it was the soundtrack to late-night drives, slow dances, and moments of quiet introspection. Songs like Your Love Is King, When Am I Going to Make a Living, and The Sweetest Taboo weren't just hits, they were deeply felt expressions that wrapped listeners in warmth and sophistication. But where did Sade come from? Who was the woman behind that voice? Born Helen Sade Adu in Ibadan, Nigeria, in 1959, she moved to England at the age of 4 after her parents separated. She was raised in the sleepy coastal town of Clacton-on-Sea in Essex, a world away from the glitz she'd later inhabit. Her mother, a nurse, was far from the music scene, and Sade found her first taste of soul through the crackly broadcasts of pirate radio, especially Radio Caroline. It was there she first heard the voices that shaped her future: Donny Hathaway, Nina Simone, Ray Charles, and Gil Scott-Heron. Real music. Music with pain and poetry baked into every note. Clacton in the 70s wasn't exactly a hotbed of creativity, so Sade moved to London to study fashion at Central St. Martin's. Artistic, cool, and fiercely individual, she dabbled in designing menswear and took on some modeling work. But it was the London club scene that began drawing her in. Her look, tightly slicked back ponytail, striking red lips, signature gold hoop earrings stood out in the crowd. She had a mystique that captivated people, even before she ever opened her mouth to sing. Ironically, she never intended to be a professional singer. In fact, when she first auditioned for a band, she didn't get the gig. "People think it all just worked out," she once said, "but I actually got rejected the first time. I thought, well, that's it then." But fate had other plans. The band was called Pride, a London-based funk group, and while they didn't see her as their star, they eventually let her in as a backup singer because, frankly, they couldn't find anyone else. Between 1981 and 1982, Pride performed across London, hoping to break through. Meanwhile, Sade quietly began carving her own path. Alongside saxophonist Stuart Matthewman, a northern soul enthusiast from Hull, she began writing her own songs. The two of them branched off from Pride, forming a smaller ensemble that delivered softer, moodier sets filled with sensual vocals and smooth sax. One of their standout moments was a cover of Julie London's Cry Me a River that turned heads. Audiences started noticing, but not because of Pride. It was Sade who had it. Among the songs they began performing in those early gigs was Smooth Operator, a track that would later become iconic. As the buzz around Sade grew, Pride started to unravel. By 1983, the band had disbanded, and Sade, Matthewman, bassist Paul Spencer Denman, and keyboardist Andrew Hale decided to form a new group. They named it simply Sade. Musically, the band members were in sync. They all loved the same classic soul records and shared an appreciation for imperfection, the rawness of singers who weren't technically perfect but sang like their lives depended on it. That unpolished authenticity gave them an edge. "We like the flaws," Hale once said. "That's where the beauty is." Still, they needed a demo. With no money for studio time, they approached producer Robin Miller, who ran Powerplant Studios. "Can we just use the space?" they asked. Miller, intrigued, agreed. What came out of those sessions was a 2-track demo, Smooth Operator and Your Love Is King. Both would become timeless classics. But the record labels didn't see the magic at first. The industry dismissed them, calling their music too jazzy, too long, too confusing. Labels couldn't categorize them, and in an era of synthpop and new wave, that was a deal-breaker. Despite rejection after rejection, Sade and her team didn't back down. They leaned into their uniqueness, using Sade's status as a London cool girl to their advantage. She had support from tastemakers like writer Robert Elms and fashion designer Jean-Paul Gaultier, who helped cement her image as not just a singer but a cultural figure. Then came the turning point. Sade landed the cover of The Face magazine, Britain's ultimate style Bible at the time. That exposure, combined with a well-timed showcase at Heaven nightclub, a top London venue, was all it took. Suddenly, the very labels that had turned her down were begging to sign her. "It was crazy," Miller recalled. "Everyone wanted a piece of her." By October 1983, Sade had signed with Epic Records. The band Matthewman, Denman, and Hale were all in. They went back to Powerplant Studios with Miller, determined to finish what they started. And so, Diamond Life began to take shape. The Sade sound was unlike anything else at the time. It wasn't about flashy solos or complex arrangements. It was about space, simplicity, letting each note breathe, each lyric land. None of them were virtuoso musicians, but that's what made it special. "If we'd been 10% better, it would have been worse," one of them joked. Their lack of polish gave the music character. And above all, there was that voice. Sade's vocals weren't loud or dramatic. They didn't soar or belt like the soul greats. Instead, her delivery was intimate, unbothered, and magnetic. Every word felt deliberate. Every note held emotion without theatrics. She didn't have to try hard, she just was. She often wrote songs by humming melodies into a recorder, which the band would later shape into full compositions. "She has this brilliant ear," said Stewart. "She'd come in with a full song in her head. She just needed us to bring it to life." Yet despite her songwriting talent, she rarely got credit for it, a fact that still puzzles those who worked with her closely.